Shalom, this is Rabbi Eliyahu Mittenhoff. Today I'll be giving a class in Gemara Gitten. This is the second class on 2b. The Mishnah says like this. I maybe get, let's make it a little bit bigger. Here we go. I maybe get, the one who brings a get from Medina Siyam, Sarik Shiyamar Befani Niktav. The one who brings a get from Medina Siyam has to say, before me it was written, before me it was signed. That's the Mishnah. The Gemara here on the bottom says, my timer. What's the reason why he has to say before me it was written, before me it was signed? First of all, we're talking about a shaliach here. We're talking about the messenger. The messenger has to say before me it was written, before me it was signed. Machlokis. Rabbi says, let me jump to the next stuff. Rabbi says the reason is, Lefi she'ein bakim lishma. Since the people in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael, they don't know this law of a katavla. It says in the pasuk that the get has to be written for the sake of the woman, from this man to this woman. They don't know that law that the get has to be written lishma, specifically for her name. So that's why he had to say b'fani niktav. So therefore, we saw that this guy says, "Hey, listen, I saw this guy to get for his wife, and I saw it written and I saw it signed. So the get was obviously written from this man to this woman. It's lishma. That's according to Rabbah. But according to Rabbah, that's not the reason why. Rabbah says, Amar lefi she'ein edom mitzuyin l'kaimo. It's because there's no edom to makayim the get. What's going to happen? Happens to be that this shliach came from Chutz La'aretz. The husband is in Chutz La'aretz. He sends with the shliach to his wife in Eretz Yisrael. But there's no Edom, the Edom over there in Chutz La'aretz. What's it going to help? So since if we send it with the shliach can act like an aid. Obviously, the Gemara asks later, what do you mean aid? It's only what you need, two Edom. The answer is, in this case, we go makil, we go easy on the woman. We allow the get to be established. We allow the get to stand because we want the woman to be able to get remarried. If the Baal comes back and he fights it, of course, you're going to have to bring two Edom and you're going to have to establish the get. But in the meantime, the get is still good, and we're not worried. That's the Maklokas, Rava, and Rabbah. Comes along the Gemara and says, My Benaihu, what's the nafkamina between these two cases? What's the difference if he has to say it because we're worried about Lishma or worried about there's no Edom? What would be the nafkamina? So one case will be, the practical difference will be, Ika de Beneo. This is between them. The Isa Betray. In a case with two Edom, two witnesses, two shluchim, two messengers brought the document. Simply, that would mean that according to the she's worried about that there's no Edom to be found. Well, in this case, there is Edom to be found because the shluchim could act as Edom. And you won't need to say, funny nekta. But according to Rabbah, who holds Rabbah Lishma, well, that doesn't really help us. Even if it's two, we're still worried that they don't know the drasha of a kitab la, that you have to write the get for the sake of the woman, and two Edom are not going to help us in such a case. It's not going to make a difference, two Edom, one Edom. You're still going to have to say funny niktav to make sure that the get was written Lishma. This is exactly what Rashi says. So let's see Rashi. Rashi says, what happens if you have a case where two shluchim are sent instead of one? Ushneim asu shluchim, both of them are shluchim, lagaresh, to divorce this woman. Get yati matakes yadeh, shnehem, and the get goes out of the hands of both of them. The Rabbah, according to the Rabbah who holds the boy lishma, the boy lememar, according to Rabbah, you're going to need to say it because he holds it has to be lishma. It doesn't matter that it's two. But the Rabbah, lo boy lememar. Rabbah, you will not need to say it. Why? Shahari shnayim heim. There are two of them. The im ya'ar baal. Hari Haim Mitsuyin Lekaimo. In such a case, I'm going to hear the yellow right over here. Hari Haim Mitsuyin Lekaimo. They could establish the get. They could do the kiyuma get. They could be the witnesses on the get, and that's because they're available here in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, comes along Tosfos. Let's see the Tosfos here. Yofi. Make it a little bit to the side because I think I have to make it a little bit smaller. It's actually hard to see it like that. Make it a little bit bigger. Give me a second. I'm sorry about that. Okay. If you have to get a Gemara Gitten, if you need to, You go to Gemara Gitten, you look on base, Amud base, and there's the Tosfos is written there. The ACA Beitrei, Tosfos says, Parasha Contras, Rashi said, the Laman Demam Lefisha ain't Edom Mitzuyim, according to the one that holds that there's no Edom Mitzuyim, Lekaimo, Elu Yakaimu. These guys will be able to do it. These guys will be able to establish it. And therefore, you don't need B'fani Nikta, B'fani Niktam. Vakasha, Tosfos has a problem. Ta'atu B'kipa Talui. Are these guys stuck in jail? There's different Peshatim and 3 different Peshatim. Whether they're stuck in jail or are they like keep? Are they stuck to the woman's head? Are they around? Who says they're around? Who says when the Baal is going to come and Ma'arer? Who says? Second. Who says that when the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer that these guys are going to be around? Maybe they won't be around. How can Rashi say that the purpose why they don't need to say B'fani Niktav is because later, if the Baal comes, they'll be able to establish the get. They'll be able to be the witnesses on the get. But who says they're going to be there? Maybe they dropped off the get and they went on their merry way. So Tosfos doesn't understand. That can't be Peshat. That can't be the reason that my Benayu, that cannot be shot in the Mishnah that says my Benayu is a case where there's 2 witnesses because they're going to establish the get. That's according to Rashi. That can't be true. Why? Because they're not going to be around. That's the first kasha. Lord, over here, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving at all. I don't think you do. Lord, oh, made it bigger. Excuse me. Oh, there we go. Lord, l'mayli le'isuya beitrei. Why did you specifically have to say Beitrei kak shavim? Excuse me. For odd, the lama lila suyu Beitrei. Why do you have to say that it's the case of witnesses that are 2? Kak shavim mishnayim min shuk. Say it's just 2 people from the shuk. Shemakirin the chatimav ha'edem. Just say it's a case of 2 guys from the shuk that are going to recognize the Adam. You don't need it to be a case. 1 second here. I'm having technical difficulties here. I really should have put it into a text as compared to looking at exactly on the daf here. Yeah. So the second kasha is why, if you want to say that that's the purpose of these 2 guys, well, then it doesn't have to be 2 guys that are shluchim. It could be, let's take a broader case. Tosfos says a kasha. He says, I don't understand why he's saying it's 2 Adam. It could be any 2 guys. So the question is, now, why is that a better kasha? The Seder, you could have said the nafkamina will be if there's 2 Adam that are found there. You have a case like that. Or you could say, no, the nafkamina will be where you send 2 shlim. So why is that a kasha? This case sounds better than that case. The answer is it's a kasha because if you would just say it's any 2 guys that recognize, that would be the broader case, and that would also include the case where you sent it with 2 Adam. So why limit ourselves to say it's a case where you send 2 witnesses, 2 shluchim? Why say it's a case where you send 2 shluchim? You could say it's just any case where the witnesses recognize the signatures. It doesn't have to be these 2 shluchim. It could be anywhere. So we understand, again, this is all Akasha and Rashi, who says that the purpose of these 2 shluchim are going to be to makayim the get, to establish the get. So you'll say, if that's true, why say it's shluchim, say it's anybody? That's Tosfos' kasha. Therefore, Tosfos wants to change Peshat in the Gemara. That is not what's going on here. When it says AC Beitrei, the nafkamina will be when you sent it with 2. Why is it a nafkamina? Well, you see, according to the Riva says, the AC Beitrei, the Amri, Shabal Shlacham, the Tsu Lomar Amin and Lomar, Lo Shalachtam. Nah, they're not going to establish the get. They're not here establishing the get. What are they going to do? And they're going to come and they're going to say, hey, the Baal sent us. Forget about the get. The Baal sent us with the get. And what will happen then? And therefore, since the whole problem was that we're worried that the Baal is going to show up from Chutz La'aretz, in this case, the Baal is not going to show up from Chutz La'aretz. Why? Because what's it going to help? 2 witnesses already said the Baal sent us. If the Baal shows up, he's no longer believed. He is no longer believed that he did not send them. And that's the nafkamina. That's why that's the Peshat in the Gemara. When the Gemara says AC Beitrei, if you sent it with 2, that'll be a nafkamina between Rava and Rabba. And according to Rava, you will not have to say Why won't you have to say? Because we already have two witnesses claiming that the Baal sent them. And therefore, we're not worried the Baal is going to come to Ma'ara. We don't need to have the other proof, which would be a funny niktam. Since it was written, we saw it was written when it was signed, that would be by one aid. And that would also remove the fact that the Baal is going to show up. We're not worried because if one aid shows up and says, hey, before me it was written, before me it was signed, we can assume that everything's going to go smoothly. Right? So that's according to, one second. If it was one aid, yeah. But the Baal could show up. One second. So what would be the difference between that and two Adam? Yeah. The one aid would have to say b'fani niktam. The one aid he has to say it. And that statement by itself takes away our doubt that the Baal is going to show up. But if two guys show up, they don't have to say it. All they have to say is two witnesses come and say, here, this is your get. If this is your get, and the Baal sent us. They don't have to say, before me it was written, before me it was signed. A matter of fact, maybe they didn't see it signed. Maybe they don't recognize the signatures. Maybe they weren't there when it's in. They're just shluchim. So if they were just shluchim and they show up and they say, listen, the Baal sent us with this get, that'll be enough. And you won't need to say, funny niktav, and that's B'shat according to the Riva. And what's the proof? I'll show you here from Daf Hey. Hold on a second. Go back to the toast. First, the Riva says, "Ve'esi beitreva amra abba b'shlach mitzvutzu loma amina v'loma v'lo shlucham." He's not going to believe. The Baal is no longer going to be believed. V'haki amra lakama, like it says over there on Daf Hey. I'll jump over here to Daf Hey for a second. Here it says on Daf Hey, Tashma. The Gemara asks, "The boy mine Shmuel Marav Huna." We have Maklokas Amarayim here. Shmuel Rav Huna. Shmuel asked, boy mine Shmuel Merav Huna. Shmuel asked Rav Huna. Shnaim she'eviu get Medina Sayam. Two witnesses, two people who bring a get with Medina Sayam. Srik she'omer b'fani nektam. Do they need to say it? Or lo? Or ain? Or they don't need to say it? Ain Srik. Amalei, he answered him. Ain Srik. They don't need to say it. Why? Ma elu yomru, if these two guys who showed up with the get, if they were to say, bifnenu garsha, before us, the woman is divorced, mi lo ma'aminan, wouldn't they be believed? So what do we see from here? We see the same exact question, whether two have to say it. The answer is no, they do not have to see it. And what's the logic? What's the logic, according to Daf Hey, why they don't you see it? Because we see, look at Rashi here. Rashi says, surely my Elo Yamro, sure these guys will be believed. Kolomar, im ratza v'hem yominam anu ma'idim, im ratze hein omrim anu ma'idan shagarsha. They could have said, hey, we saw her get divorced. We're not telling get, or v'shlucha get, or we gave him the get, or sent the get. So since you see the whole din is a din in manis, right? According to this logic, according to this Gemara, the reason why you do not need to say b'fani niktam is because these guys are believable. Not big like Rashi, who said that these guys would come to according to Rashi, what should it have said? It should have said, hey, surely if these guys show up, so they could makayim the get. That's not what he's saying. The Gemara says that's not the logic. The Gemara says the logic is, hey, surely these guys are believed. If that's true, that fits with Tosfos. Let's go back to Tosfos. That fits with Tosfos. Why does that fit with Tosfos? Because Tosfos says the whole point of these two guys is they believe that the Baal sent them. And that's their purpose, to be believed. And since they're believed, the Baal can no longer come back and say, hey, I didn't send you guys. Okay. So now we see a raya from Daf Hey that it's not like Rashi and it is like Tosfos. Hold on. Surely if they would have said, we would believe, I'm sure they would be believed. Now we have a kasha, an unstated kasha. They say, wait a second. If you want to say we didn't see anything and they just could say sent us. So how do we know the get's any good, Baklau? Maybe the guy sent allows a get. If you say funny nikta, we saw it was signed and we saw it and we were there and we witnessed the whole thing, so the get's good. But maybe this guy, since you no longer just need them to say before he was written, before he was signed, maybe the get itself is no good. No, the answer is Mistama. The came with Shalach le get, since the guy already sent the get. Gitten asu, he sent it al pi halacha. We're not worried that this guy is going to send a fake get to his wife and he's going to wind up with mamzerim. And she's going to go and have kids with another guy while she's married to him. We're not worried about that. This guy already went through the effort of sending these two guys with a get. We can assume the get was sent. It was kosher. Maybe he'll come back and he'll try to fight it. That's a different story. But in the meantime, until proven otherwise, we're not assuming that this guy sent a false get and he's going to wind up with a woman getting married to another man while he's still married to her husband. That we're not worried about. Okay, so what happened here? Let's just do a quick summary of Tosfos. Do a quick summary of Tosfos here. Rashi seems, the Gemara says, according to the nafka mina is AC Trey, if it was sent with two people. Fine. According to Rashi, and according to actually anybody who would read the Gemara, that's the simple way a kid would read the Gemara, that the nafka mina will be that if it's sent with two, well, according to Rava, the problem is we're worried about ain't Edom Mitzuyim, there's no Edom around. But in this case, the Edom would be around, and that's exactly what Rashi said. Rashi said these two guys will act as Edom to Mekayim the get. Comes along Tosfos, he says, Einokanami, look, that's simple Peshat in the Gemara. But the problem is, it doesn't work. Why? Because what was Tosfos' first kasha? Who says these guys are going to be around to establish the get? Maybe they left. If there's no people living over in Echos Lars that recognize the signatures, even though these guys recognize the signatures, who said they're hanging around? And B, why limit it to the case of shluchim that recognize the get? Say the broader case, let's say a more general case. The rule is that a stam statement has to be in all aspects, in all places, and all times. When you see a statement in Gemara, it applies to all cases. Why making a kimta? You're limiting it to a case where it's dafka tu shluchim. I could just say, and it would be a case where where two people do recognize the gate. That would include shluchim. Good. Those are the two kashas. So therefore, the Riva wants to come along and say, that's not Peshat in the Gemara. Peshat in the Gemara is when you send it with two. So then they're going to claim that the Baal sent us, and the Baals are not going to come to Ma'arir. Not that they're going to establish the get. They're going to stop the Baal. He brings the Raya from Daf Hey, and it answers both kashas. Why does it answer both kashas? Because we don't need them to be around. They can leave. They just come along and they say, hey, the Baal sent us, shalom. That's it. Now the Baal's not going to come, the Baal's worried. He's not going to show up. That's number one. And number two, the reason why we didn't bring two people from any two people, because how does the Baal know what's going on? It has to be that the Baal sent two, and he knows there's a possibility that maybe it's going to get over there, and they're going to say, hey, the Baal sent us. And in such a case, he's not going to want to show up. So therefore, we've answered both kashas on Rashi. And that's Peshat according to Tosfos. Fine. Well, now, I want to read here. What do we have here? We have the Rashba. Now, the Rashba is very similar. Very similar. He's got the kasha to Tosfos. He has a kasha or two. It's worth it to see the Rashba. Chedushi Rashba Mesechtes Gitten. Okay. Hi. I'm here at this right here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Let me make it bigger for you guys. There we go. Hi, Amr Deku Benayu, Desu Betrei. The nafkamina will be where it was sent for two shluchim. Parish Rashi, according to Rashi's Lamanda, Lefisha Ein Edom Mitsuyan, according to the sheet that says that there's no Edom around, no witnesses around, the Kaimo, Eli Yakaimayu. These guys will establish it. They will act as the witnesses. The Rashba says it doesn't make any sense, not clear. To me, Mincha v'lehu v'kasista. What are these guys locked up? They're not locked up. That if the Baal were to show up, that these guys will be around to establish a get, they're not going to be around. Who says they're around? Well, that was kasha number one, same as Tosfos. Second kasha. This is a great kasha. Second kasha, different kasha than Tosfos, but another kasha. What? The stam kamar they see you betray bein makirim chatam yadon shal edom bein enu makirim. Wait a second. What are you making up stories here? The Gemara says betray the get with two shluchim, two messengers. Who says they recognize the signatures? According to Rashi, these guys will be able to recognize the signatures. Maybe they don't recognize the signatures. Maybe they work for UPS. I don't know. He sent these two guys. I'd say he doesn't recognize the signatures. So I don't understand you, Rashi. Kasha number 2. Kasha number 3. V'od kushya li. If you'll say that it's true that really the shluchim do recognize it, im came srika based in ladas she'elu makirin chatam yadan. Then the Beis Din has to know about that. That's part of their job, to know about it. The imlokain, and if they don't know it, misfeka lo sharin le, the nisa, the chachila, dilma ein makirim. If you said that you wanted to be, if you said it with two guys, you want to say they have to establish the get. Well, basically, if they have to establish a get, the Beis Din has to know, hey, we have these two guys around to establish a get. And maybe they have to recognize the signatures. Who says they recognize the signatures? The Beis Din has to check to make sure that they recognize the signatures. The im came afilu AC betray, and therefore even if said to betray, the Rava nami sirik lomu faniniktam. Or they have to say which means is in place of a kiyum get. Or yadinan, or we have to know that they know. It can't just be after here. Either they know or they don't know. If that was the whole purpose, is that they have to establish the get. So we have to make sure that these guys have the possibility to establish the get. And this achasi. It's one. Aliba de Rabba, according to Rabba. Dim kain leka banayu esabei trey. And therefore it will not be true that esabei trey. Because if we say that they don't know and we have a suffix no, so we're back to square one, and they're going to have to say b'fani niktav. It's not going to help. It's another kasha on Rashi. So how could it be that you're saying that they're going to establish the get? How is it going to be that you're saying that they're going to makayim the get? In such a case, we'd have to make sure that they recognize the signatures. And if they don't recognize the signatures, then they're going to have to say b'fani niktav. So we're back to square one. It won't be an afkamina. There won't be a difference between Rabbi and Rabbi. You're still going to have to say it. V'nirei, kamosha parasha Rivam. Therefore, he brings the Rivam also. He wants to say Rivam's Peshat. This Lashon. You see your betray. That we're talking about was what are these two guys doing that he sent? Amrim, they come and they say, Shabal Shlacham, that the Baal sent him. The Su Loma Amin and Baal Loma Mezuyaf. And therefore, the Baal will no longer be able to say Mezuyaf who. Velo shlachtem, and that we didn't send them. Mashain came b'chad, which was not true by one. So the nafkamina case is when you send by two, you do not need to say b'fani niktav and b'fani niktav. Why not? Because the Baal, we're not worried the Baal is going to show up anymore because they did the purpose. Just like b'fani niktav solved that problem also according to Ein Edom Mitzuyim. So we wanted to know that the get is a good get. So we wanted to say before it was written. So too, there's another way to know that it's a good get. How do we know? Because if they say the Baal sent us, if the Baal sent us, we're also not worried that the Baal is going to come and show up and not get the get. So that would be the nafkamina, and that's the answer according to the Riva, and it has nothing to do with the kiyuma get, like Rashi. Nothing to do with that. The taima darmin lekama. And it's like we said later, Ma elu yamu b'fnayno garsha. Oh, this is derived from Daf Hey. And it's just like we said earlier. What did these guys say b'fnayno garsha milo minan? Just like it says over there that if they would have shot it, they said it with divorce, we would believe them. So also we believe them if they come and they say the Baal sent us. That's derived from Daf Hey. The Kevan, the Vadesh Lachem, and since they've surely sent them, Sulo Chashinin. We don't have a chashash anymore. Shaman is kaven lakavki. The vada ishlachem sulo chashinin. For kaven the vali shacham. Okay, this is the same point at the end of the other Tosfos. He's saying the same thing, he's just saying it a different way. The kaven the vada ishlachem, and since they sent them sulo chashinin, we're not a chashash. Shaman is kaven lakalkia. We're not worried about the guy that is a kilkul here, that the thing is messed up. The chatam es a get so this get is written with false edis. Why? Because you know that the Baal sent him. Kedei be Yushami, like it says the Yushami. B'chash lomar Shema Chatmu Be'edim Pasulim. Maybe the get was written with false witnesses. Rabbi Yalbin saying, Ein Chash Kill Cool, Biyad Shemayim. We're not worried about the guy's going to makaka the Shemayim. He's going to wind up making Mamzerim. We're not worried about that. But if the guy were to show up himself into Beis Din, he is Chashud. The Kill Cool, Mishmatok Shu Yedua. Since it's known. Shim Ba Va'ar Arabato. And if we would come to Baal Bi'ar, his ear will be Bato. Afhu Machatim Avo Be'edim Kasher. Afhu Machatmo Be'edim Kasher. And even if there was Edom Kasherim, but still, we are still concerned that maybe the guy himself is going to show up and he's going to try to stop the get. But just to send the get stam, to say that we're not worried because that's already crazy. That's the guy's going to wind up making mamzer. Okay, fine. That was the Rashba. So the Tosfos and the Rashba both say the same thing. They both have a lot of kashas on Rashi. Well, what's the problem now? Now we have to save Rashi. We got a lot of kashas on Rashi. We don't understand Rashi at all. We're really stuck here. So here comes along the Chemda Shlomo to save Rashi. Rashi's got a lot of problems here. What does it mean that they were sent to Makayim the get? So here we are, the Chemda Shlomo. Let me make it bigger. That's big. Okay. Here we go. Divrei Amaska, Vesiv Beitrei. How are we going to save Rashi? The Kasha, the Atu Bakipa. First Kasha Rashi. What, is the guy locked up forever and we're just going to establish the get? Doesn't make sense. Why are you limiting it to two people that you sent? Say it's anybody who recognizes the get. The broader case, the two first Kashas are Tosfos. But L'chora, it appears. Yesh Lomar, to answer, the Kavan Sheikar Chashash. Since the Iker problem, the thing we're worried, the rabbis are worried about here, is Shiavoha Baal Va'arer. The Baal is going to come to Ma'arer. The Kavan Shehu Yadua Sheshluach, and since he knows that it was sent Ayedei Shnaim, because he sent it with two, Lo Baal Irur. He is no longer going to come and show. That's true even according to Rashi. Why? The Shema Yukan Shluchim, because maybe the Shluchim are there. So he's not going to show up. Actually, there at that point, I think he already answered for Rashi. He already answered both kashas. I think maybe, look, according to this, it says, but it could be answered the first kasha. What, are they around? Are they around forever? The answer is no, it doesn't matter whether they're around or not. Once the guy sent them with two shluchim, he's not going to show up. And that's even true according to Shita's Rashi. We're going to see in a minute how the feels of Shita's Rashi, because Rashi's going to say is Gumakayim the get. But that's a fact, okay? So we don't have a problem with the kippah. Now, the Shtayim Acherim, and also answers the kasha why we don't have to, the Gemara did not say, the Gemara specifically said that it was sent with two guys as compared to just saying there was guys that recognize the signatures. Why is that? Because we need to know that the Baal needs to know that he sent these two guys. It can't be just any two guys. It has to be two guys that the Baal sent. Yesh Lomer Deshabri Da'at Bekipa. And there is the answer. It makes sense now. Da'atu Bekipa, since it's Shapir Da'at Bekipa, that Tolu, it makes sense. Why? Because since this whole thing is dependent on whether the Edom are there or not, and the Baal is going to come to Ma'arer, came in She'eno Yadua Klau, Sheesh Kam Shnayim Makirim, in a case where there would be other people as compared to the people that he sent. In such a case, Chatmiyim Va'edom, Umenestam, Ein Edom Mitzuyim Kaimo. And simply speaking, if it was not those two guys, it was just another set of guys, what was the guy thinking? He said, maybe there's two guys. Maybe there's the whole problem is there's not Edom Mitzuyim. It's just not Edom Mitzuyim. And he didn't send those guys. He would have just sent any two guys. Kain Yavo Ma'arer. In such a case, he is going to come to Ma'arer. And he's hoping there's nobody around to establish the get. So that's why, 1 second, I'll explain in a minute. But if he sent them, he's worried. With the Shema, maybe you'll say, but Shlema Yadua Shahabal, Shahalchul Medina Sayam. Yesh Lomer de lo Chashinin. I say maybe the guys came back and he knows they're not there. Let's say like this. How do they answer both kashas? He says like this. First of all, I'll answer for Rashi. Why? Because these guys, once the first kasha is, which is what these guys are locked up forever, the answer is no. Also, according to Rashi, they don't have to be locked up forever, even though Rashi said him with kiyum of the get, but he's not worried. He's not what he's going to explain that in a minute. He explained it, but he didn't explain it in detail. And the second half is going to come on. I'm jumping the gun a little bit. But he's explaining that we're not worried about we're not worried that the guys have to be there because the Baal's not going to show up. It's a fact. Once he sent two guys, he's not going to show up. So even if they disappear, we're not worried anymore. Secondly, and that's specifically why we didn't take two other guys. Why we didn't take two other guys? Because he doesn't know about two other guys. He will show up. If it's just two other guys, no Edom Mitzuyim, the Baal is going to show up. If it's his guys, he won't show up. And that's why the Gemara said specifically his guys and not two other guys. Good. So he answered both Kasha and Rashi. Now, what he wants to spell out in detail now. V'od. Nearly. The F Shalom or the Gam Rashi model if you perish Rivam. Oh, this is great. And he wants to go even a step further. He wants to say that Rashi himself agrees with the Rivam. That the purpose of that Enoch Inami, when Rashi said that he came to establish the get, but how did it work? The way that I'm jumping the gun, I'll just tell you the punchline. The way that we establish a get is by him coming and saying, or him coming and by them coming and saying that the Baal sent us. That's establishment of the get. That's what I want to say. I just read it inside now. For but nearly the Efsha Velomid, the Gam the Rashi model the Fisha Rivam. The Ima Shtayim Bo Lebeistin. That if two guys come to Beistin, Ma'amidim Sh'asu Shluchim, and they give testimony the Baal sent us, Mahani, it works. Lusu lo sri kiyum acher. This is the Shittas Rivam. You do not lead any kiyum acher because the Baal is not going to show up at that point. Everything's fine. We're not worried. Rak the Rashi sober. The only difference. So now it comes at the opposite. The difference between Rashi and the Rivam is that the Rashi is going to require a Beis Din, where the Rivam did not require a Beis Din. The Rivam just said the two guys are going to show up and say the Baal sent us, game over. But the Rashi is going to say no. But I need that to happen in Beis Din. See in a minute. But Rak the Rashi was served the Mashman the Isi will betray. Oh, excuse me, just opposite. 1 second. Muhammad Osimakian. No, just the opposite. It's the opposite. That the Tosfos has to be in Beis Din, and Rashi doesn't have to be in Beis Din. Rak the Rashi was served the Mashman say betray. Lo svik shum tikun maklau. You don't need anything else besides that. The Hainu. She'enu svikin levo leBeis Din. Rashi don't need to come to Beis Din. Lokinin shekatuva Tosfos lekaman. The Mashnahaka, the Lokama Yadate. There's another Tosfos on Daf Gimel that says, why wasn't it written singular, it was written plural? Eko Beneu. Because we wanted to say that since it's written in plural, the Gemara over there did not want to say the case of a singular because it wanted to include the case where there was two Adam. The two Adam wanted to come along and say that the Baal sent us. But Al Kain, Perish Rashi, She Yavoi Iror, Hem Yekaimu. So according to Rashi, if they were to Sheim Yavo V'yer, if they were to come to Meyer, Hem Yekaimu, they would establish it. V'zeh Hakiyum Masha Omrim. Shluchim, is a kiyum that Rashi was speaking about. When Rashi said that if there Peshat and Rashi, this is unbelievable. Peshat and Rashi, when Rashi wanted to said that they came to Makayim the get and we were jumping up and down, we don't understand. What did he mean by that? He meant that when they came in and they say, hey, the Baal sent us, game over. That's the kiyum get. So we answered all the kashas on Rashi. First of all, let's read the Hemshech of the, who is this? The Chem de Shlomo. Rak, before I explain everything, hold on. Rak, give me a second here. Oh, it's this little piece here. Rak the Akshav, Ain Suik Lomer Klau, Kushamom and Vavia Geber. They don't need to say anything right now. They don't need to say anything. They're finished. Just like, Kumo, Amevi Geber Tzrao. The Lomad Sinam Klau should speak like Lebeistin. Rak Shemos are like get, they'll have to his hand of the get. Became nearly Fumarita. And that's how it appears to me. I'll read to the end and then I'll explain it. Therefore, you don't have to say it's dependent anymore, dependent on the fact that these guys are around. They don't need to be around. The Baal is not going to show up. Even if he knows, even though he knows the guys came back and he sees, hey, these are the guys I sent, he's still not going to come. Why? Maybe they did say in front of it. He doesn't know what happened over there. So maybe they did say in front of the Beis Din, Shem Shluchim. Even though they don't need to say it. Maybe they did say it. Maybe they did do it. And either way, not according to Rashi, not according to Tosfos, these guys are not going to show up. The Baal is not going to show up. Which should not be true if there's two guys from the outside, like we said. Why? The Baal doesn't know anything about these guys. Who are these guys? Maybe they've been Al-Kain, Chashini, Shivola, Aro. So basically what he's saying is that Rashi and Tosfos, there's no conflict between them. Why is there no conflict between them? Because when Rashi said, let me explain this. Hold on a second. There's no conflict between Rashi and Tosfos. Why not? Because when Rashi said Peshat, Mazda Esi Beitrei, that they can Makayim the get, how can they Makayim the get? When they come and they say, the Baal sent us, game over. Game over. That's the same thing. Like that's what Tosfos said. Tosfos said the difference will be, it's actually Tosfos coming out more strict. The difference will be that Tosfos will say that these guys are going to, the case is AC Beitrei. Two guys, they go to Eretz Yisrael, and they say in front of the Beis Din, the Baal sent us. At that point, it's game over. But Rashi's even more makel. Rashi says they don't even have to say in front of Beis Din. And even if they didn't say in Beis Din, it's already a kiyum. And at that point, the Baal is no longer going to show up. So it's all over. So what were the two kashas on Tosfos? The two kashas from Tosfos was, hey, where? They're not around. They're not around to Makayim. Well, we can answer that. No problem, according to the Chemda Shlomo for Rashi. Rashi says they have to be around to Makayim. No, they don't have to be around to Makayim. They're already Makayim the get. When did the Makayim the get? When they came, when they said, the Baal sent us. That's it. Game over. That was kasha number one. Kasha number two was, why specifically, if they're talking about Kiyum get, you have to talk about specifically two messengers that the Baal sent. Maybe just say the broader category. Any two witnesses, what the nafkamina will be in a case where any two witnesses recognize the signature on the get. Why limit it to the case where the two messengers the Baal sent? The answer is no. It only works in the case, even according to Rashi, that the Kiyum get will only work in a case where the Baal sent those two guys. And why? Because if the Baal sent the two guys and the guys show up and they say, hey, the Baal sent us, that's the Kiyum get. But if it's two other guys, it's not going to help. Why? That's not two get. What Kiyum get? Two other guys recognize the signatures. Big a deal. We're not talking about a Kiyum that happens later. We're talking about a Kiyum that happens before. So since the Kiyum already happened, so we answered the kashas. And we answered the kashas, the two kashas that Tosfos had on Rashi. I'm just wondering out loud. I'm thinking out loud here. I'm thinking of here. We had another kasha. I want to see how it answers this. How does it answer the kasha on the Rashba? But the stamka amar, AC Beitrei, whether they recognize the signatures or don't recognize the signatures. Beautiful. It also answers that kasha. It also says the kasha that the Rashba asked. The Rashba said that the Gemara said AC Beitrei. So if Rashi says it have to Makayim the get, so who says they recognize the signatures? Read the Gemara. Do you know how to read it? It says AC Beitrei. Does it say that they sent witness messengers that recognize the signatures? It doesn't say anything about that. So we don't understand Rashi. The answer is no. According to the Chemda Shlomo, you don't need to recognize the signatures. All you need to these guys to do is to show up and say that the Baal sent us. Rashi said Kiyum get, Nachon, and that is the Kiyum get. The Kiyum get is that the guys showed up and they said the Baal sent us. So now we can assume that the get is a good get. And really, Rashi and the Riva, there's no contradiction between them. Okay, that's it for today's class.